Welcome to the 2-month review. This is the 6th season of a podcast which we do weekly, in which we talk about a single book, in this case, the Book of Disquiet by Fernando Pessoa. And we break it down bit by bit, have fun with it, explain it, get into the different intricacies of how it's written and why it's put together in the way that it is. And as always, I am Chad Post, and I'm joined by Brian Wood.
Hi, Chad. It's a pleasure to be here today.
That was the super most awkward introduction I've done in a long time.
Oh, God.
And our special guest this week is Anthony Blake, who is about 15 feet from me in a different office here at Sutter.
Hello, everyone.
You were on here one other time for
Fox. I was there my first day of work. I had not met Brian yet, so
that makes sense why you didn't contribute very much then.
Yeah, I was brand new, but now I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Am I gonna get fired if I say anything?
And now I know it's impossible.
Now you know what the limits are. So before we get into talking about, this book, the section that we were reading, the section that we were talking about this week is, just for people paying attention, pages 95 through 141, or sections 82 through 130. We're still in the Vicente Guedes part of the book, but this is the last time that we'll only be talking about his section, which I'm glad about. I'm ready to on. But before we get into this, we mentioned this before of having a 2-month review bingo, and now this is come into existence. Anthony, do you want to explain what you put together?
Yeah, so we have, I don't know, obviously the listeners but won't be able to see this, but the viewers, I've got a little bingo card here. We're printing up physical versions. We're sending them to bookstores, so you can pick one up there. But also we have a link on the 3% website, where kind of the usual stuff that we say. Awkward introduction is definitely one that's already happened. So
you can mark that off on your card.
Yeah, you can mark that off on your card. Whoever sends us to Chad, whoever emails Chad the first, will get 30% off any order on openletterbooks.org.
Yeah, we'll give you a special code. So yes, if you get a bingo, either watching this or listening to the podcast, whoever's first, whatever point it happens, you send us a picture of your card just denoting. You don't have to cross it off because you might want to use the card more than once. But you can just denote which things that took place in the podcast. And the first person to do that, we'll give you a code. You can use it for 30% off anything at Open Letter. And we were going to exclude some items, but we are not going to do that anymore. So you can even get 30% off the complete set of all of our books. So
you finally come around to being all inclusive.
Yeah, I decided that
it's about time. Jeez, man.
Maybe it's good to open things up,
It's just with this midterms election coming up, I thought, let's include everybody for once.
So
good thinking. Just a quick question. I'm curious. What are some of the items on the bingo card? I don't have one in front of me, and I swear to God, I can't figure out all the links for this stuff because it's like 2%, 3%.
Yeah, the numbers are difficult.
1% is bad. 3% is good. It's very.
I don't want to give them all away because I'm afraid you're gonna.
No. I'm just curious, like what some
all of them. I think we're safe from this one based on where we are today. A Cat Interrupts.
Okay.
Twin Peaks. I'll give you that one because that's going to happen either way.
Yeah.
Someone calls me Andrew is on there because that happened last week. Someone is hungover.
Okay. I think we're clear today. No.
I'm all right on this one. Insulting a guest.
Significant.
Okay. Sports digression, etc.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun ones on there. If you download the card and play along, if you download the card and you listen to this podcast, you'll know immediately most of those, or like you've heard them happen because they happen a lot, and you'll be able to play along. But it'll be fun. We're trying to avoid knowing what they are just so we don't rig this in any way, shape, or form. But anyway, so there's that. Download it, play along, have fun. Anthony, how did you come to reading Fernando Pessoa? Because you were familiar with this book, but well before coming to...
Yeah, well, you guys have been talking a lot about this, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but super different version. Is before the New Directions version came out. And so this stuff I'm reading now is completely new to me as well.
Was yours the Serpent's Tail one I've heard that's been going around, or?
Yeah, one of those. Yeah. It picks up. I think it picks up. The beginning is the part 2 that you guys are about to get into.
Oh, like people stop believing in God or whatever the.
That's what this one is. The first one, the first page in the Serpent Cell one. The first one is sometimes I think I will never leave Rua dos Dourades. Once written down,
Yes.
that seems to
Yes.
me like
Yes. Yes.
Ah,
Yeah. So that's what I'm familiar with. I think I found it. There's some website that just like catalogs writers who are unknown but should be more known, and I think I just found them there and
it's
kind of
called.
worked from there.
It's a website called LitHub.
No, not that one.
10 and unknown writers that you should know.
No, not on that one. But I mean, he is now on LitHub quite a bit. So
Yep.
no, I'm digging Pessoa because it's kind of like one of those. It gives you that air of satisfaction of like, oh, you don't know this band? Oh my gosh, I can't believe you haven't heard them. I
exactly.
mean,
Yeah, it's like hipster status. You get a little credit.
how do you like this, this, and this, but not know this? They're like, I don't know. I don't read enough. I'm sorry. Like I'm always in that camp of, I don't know. So it's kind of nice. Like I finally got, but now everybody knows this, so I got to find the next.
Yeah, you got to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, absolutely. Really does have that vibe though. So
what were some of the other names on this? Do you remember any of the names of that list?
No,
you saw
because
Pessoa and checked
the
it
rest
out.
of them are still obscure. We'll have to wait
Oh,
until
okay.
New Directions picks them up.
Okay.
hey, wait, we could pick them up too, buddy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You work at a publishing house.
We publish books too.
That's how you get fired. No.
New Directions. Check out his CV. It's out there.
Yeah. Oh my god.
You think the rent's high in Rochester?
Oh man. So how when you read it, were you like, did you read it straight through or did you read your section moving around?
No, I think it's almost like maddening to read it straight through. I don't know how you guys are gonna make it through the whole thing, but
there's a lot. We power through, man. That's what we do here.
I mean, we can talk about it. I think this is probably the largest chunk that I've read at one time.
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely benefits to doing that. That's different, but I think I would still prefer to kind of pop in and out of it, which is what I had been doing.
But you're a poet by trade, right? I mean, that's your training is in.
Yeah, theoretically, yeah.
You have a poem in a new magazine.
Yes, I just had a poem out in Washington Square, which was very cool because there's one page separating me and Shane McRae, who's like my all-time favorite. So very cool.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Very cool. But when you're reading Pessoa, do you read it with like your poetry hat on, or do you have other hats you put on when you read? Maybe I'm saying that wrong.
I think I do, but I still like object to it being called poetry.
Why is that?
Like I stumbled upon it in Pals in the poetry section. I was like, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it does some of the things that poetry does, and then it abstains from some other things. So it's like in this own little space. So I guess it's like kind of its own thing. So I don't need to call it poetry. I'll call it whatever.
Yeah.
So when you say like it does some stuff and abstains from others, can you be maybe just slightly more concrete for me learning something? Like what do you say? What would it abstain from that would maybe put it like more firmly into poetry, as far as your opinion is concerned?
I think Anthony froze.
Oh, right when I actually asked a good question.
I know.
What are the chances?
I assume part of it is has to have line breaks. No, definitely not one of them.
Yeah, I don't get much of a turn in some of his thoughts, you know. All of a sudden, just out of. And what about the birds? Do they feel like, you know, something like that? Like it's missing.
Yeah, it's
missing that revelation of. Yeah.
I guess in the way, like I've had the weirdest time reading this book too. Which I don't want to make this too indulgent, but like we're on this path. But part of the reading the poetry thing, when I read a book of poetry, I always have to make sure that I don't read more than like one poem at a time, because I'll read like 7 of them and they just blend together, and like I don't process them very well because I don't adjust. Like you're saying, put on your poetry hat, which I think there's a specific sort of poetry way of reading poetry in which you're paying attention to things or remembering things in a different way and looking for things that aren't what you're looking for when you're reading prose, right?
I would think so. I mean,
yeah, that's not a controversial thing to say at all. And this book, because it is in that middle, like there are times where I get into it. Like at the beginning of the part that we're talking about today, I got really into it and marked a lot of stuff and was like, yes, I enjoy this. And I read like 7 or 8 little bits in a row and got into a kind of flow of it. And then yesterday when I went back to try and finish it, because I try not to read all 40 pages at once. Like I want to read them like, a couple sections at a time as if it were poetry. But
well, you just shrink into melancholy if you read 40 sections at a time.
I was wondering, like, has anyone ever talked about this book in terms of like a treatise on mental health and depression? Because like it's basically like explaining like the depths of mental health problems in like a sort of poetic or in a poetic way. But rather than focusing on how creative and amazing he was, like this dude could tap into something that I think a lot of people suffer from.
Yeah. Well, he did tell his writer friend, "Why don't you just go kill yourself?" I mean, you always talk about it. You can actually do it.
It's possible, man. You can just go.
Okay, some controversial advice, I would say.
Yeah, I suppose so. Okay, so Anthony's back. Anthony,
back.
I tried to answer a little bit for you, but the question that Brian had asked was about what it does do concretely, like what Pessoa does that would sort of qualify in the realm of poetry, and what he abstains from. If you have specifics that you're thinking of.
I mean, he like dips in and out of the lyric moment. Like at the end of this section, I think he's hitting kind of a higher lyric, where he starts getting into these lists. He starts getting into these kind of these like drumming, pounding, very rhythmic sections. And there's other sections that don't seem to care too much about that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's poetic in the sense that it's fragmented and it's not interested in like a clear narrative and a clear A follows B follows C in the way that poetry isn't.
Right.
But I guess like on a line level, sometimes it hits that high lyric and sometimes it just shies away from it and just says, this is going to be more plain.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too.
Toward the end of the section, though, I think where it started getting into the Lady of Death and all that, it started, maybe not my favorite section, but it started, I don't know, that kind of pounding rhythmic quality that I would expect.
Yeah, that was a part that I started to just be like, I don't give a fuck about this. Like, I stopped. I'm sorry, but there is, for anyone who's watching Riverdale, which everyone should be watching Riverdale because it's the greatest TV show.
I'm on season 2, episode 5 now.
Okay, getting closer. Yeah. So this season, there's a whole thing about the Gargoyle King. So on 139 in section 128 of Pessoa, there's a bit that says Virgin King who scorned love, Shadow King who disdained light, Dream King who rejected life, which all I could think about was Riverdale's Gargoyle King as fitting in there. And that was all I marked on the last 12 pages of the section because I totally tuned out. Like I'm sorry, I'm a bad reader.
No, it would be True Detective season 1, the Yellow King.
Yeah, well, that's what the Gargoyle King's a reference. True Detective season 1.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Twin Peaks layered on top.
Season 3 coming out soon. Twin Peaks.
That's out. So there's I don't know, where do we want to go with this section? I really like the beginning part of it. So it started on like sections 83 was okay for me, and onward, but there's a bunch around 85 through 90 that I was like way into.
Before we get to that way into, let's just jump to 98 real fast.
Yeah.
Because the first line on section 98, the ethics of despair.
That's the one
to be published equals the socialization of the self. As a publisher, Chad.
Well, I mean, that is true. So like,
I guess we have to unpack socialization of the self.
Oh, I'll respond to that. Let's read the whole thing because this one does. I marked this whole one. To be published equals the socialization of the self. What a base necessity. And yet it is still quite removed from being an action, since it is the publisher who profits and the typographer who produces the book. At least it has the merit of incoherence. Which is one of those things like his non-action bit, where like when he's talking about the publishing is the I can't say that word.
It's hard to say. I agree.
Socialization of the self. It's sort of like he's created these dreams or these ideas or whatever, but they're internal to him, and only through publishing do other people have access to those integral or innermost thoughts that you've put on paper at that point in time. And like his whole kind of bit about don't do anything, just dream it, just be within that dream where it is. This is where that becomes exposed. So like as a publisher, you are doing that to writers. That is sort of like the point. And some writers really want that, obviously, and want to be known by everyone and to be part of like the whole world. But others like have a different reaction and don't play the game quite the same way. And I would say like Pessoa would have been a very unpopular writer if he was writing today. He'd be great at Instagram, I think, but he would not be like people, or this character, Vicente Guedes, would not be one of the Twitter sort of authors who's constantly praising themselves and their work and they're like where they're getting referred to and all that kind of stuff. He's like the opposite of that.
So do you think that when he's saying that, like, so in order to be published, you have to, like, you almost can't be yourself, right? Because you're having to conform in some way, like to be marketable or to be like, oh, no, you can't say that, or you can't go here. Like, we can't publish that. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain amount of kind of safety or, you know, like pasteurization that the product has to go through in order to be published.
I think that's more true now than maybe when he was writing this.
Okay.
Like in 1914, right? Like in 1914, like there wasn't as many, it wasn't the same. There's different things that are happening, but it wasn't quite the same bit. And like, I took that more as his like internalization of like the idea of sharing. Cause there's a later part, is it later or is it before that? Which is like, he's got all those bits about like not wanting to publish or why I'm writing this book or what, you know, I don't want to do this.
I live how it ties in too when he was running publishing and he hadn't published a single thing in like 2 years.
Yeah, like his whole life. On section 109, page 119 in our edition, please don't think I write in order to publish or simply for the sake of writing or making art. I write as an end in itself, the ultimate refinement, the temperamentally illogical refinement of my cultivation of states of soul. So like his anti-publishing thing, or like sort of like not sharing it, not writing to be that figure, not writing for that purpose, but writing just to have written is a little bit, I think that's how I was taking that section that you were referring to of the socialization of the self, more so than like our publishing industry today, which does have a lot of what you're talking about. And where I think like this character wouldn't necessarily fit in with our publishing world, especially not the stuff about women. Like that would be like real questionable. Like, that dude would not be doing well. And
except for the bit about open the window to the feline in you, I think that holds up.
Wow.
Yeah. I do like, one of my favorite bits of his was the advice on happily married women for a while. Cause I was like, yeah, I get this. This is good. Like most women are probably unhappily married because if they're married to men, those men are probably fucked up and stupid. Like, so like, I get that. But then it goes off rails on this section and like becomes a lot like misogynistic than
tough.
Funny. Like, yeah, you should like sort of cheat on your husband in your mind because your husband's probably a loser. Like, yeah, I mean, I get that.
If you're banging a white dude, imagine an even whiter dude on top of you. There's something along those lines.
That's basically what it was.
That would
There's a lot about paleness, a lot of it like that, and it comes up a lot in this section.
That's true.
Yeah, I guess that whole to be published equals the socialization of the self is something I've been I don't know, it struck with me in that other way, just because of, you know, producing my own work right now. I'm always trying to think of like, oh, I don't want this to be taken the wrong way. I don't want to upset anybody. Like you're always kind of self-editing and not going where you actually want to go out of fear, or just like out of like, well, I'll never get published if I do this or if I do that, or, you know.
Yeah, there's an article or a post on 3% that's going up this afternoon about 2 deep vellum books. And one of them is The Imagined Land. And like, I didn't get into it, but like, there is like, I read the book in one way and enjoyed it, but there is a whole take that one could have where it's written by an Argentine man living in Paris about a 14-year-old Chinese girl who has like a semi-intimate relationship with another Chinese girl from the 1920s. And like that part of the like, and it depicts like Chinese society that way in a way that I don't think is historically accurate. And that's one of those things that people could object to, and that I could see writing that if you were trying to write something like that now, you would hesitate away from, because that reading exists in our culture today and might not have existed in 1914 or in 1980 even. Like no one would have brought that up. But now, because people do bring that up and because that's possible, you end up self-censoring or deciding not to write about certain things just for fear of that kind of that sort of reaction.
That and the book gets blurbed by Woody Allen and Roman Polanski. Masterpiece. Oh no. I don't know if we should go with that one.
I read it every night before bed.
Oh God. Oh God.
Oh, no good.
All right. So you said there was some stuff earlier. I'm sorry. I hijacked that.
So like I have just a bunch of ones that are circled in a row and tagged. And this was where like a few days ago, I've been trying to read this as like slowly, like I was saying, like a bit every day rather than trying to rush through it the way that I have been with like the other books that we've done, where I like to read them like the day before we go on the podcast so they're all fresh in my memory. With this, I'm like, if I do that, it becomes more blurry because I can't recall. There's not that way of putting it together for me. The way that when I read poetry, I have to read it slowly too. But there are a bunch that I marked that were in that range that I really liked. Like the section of like the there's the some of the unhappily married women advice, like how to annoy your husband. It's important that your husband should on occasion get angry. It's like, cool. That's a good one. But
yeah, that's Sean Connery's whole thing. Sometimes an open hand is okay. It's like, Sean, I don't know about that, man. Like, that's an open hand. It's okay. I was angry.
So the one of the ones though, right by where you were talking about and relates to what you were talking about that I had marked was 99 in Aesthetics of Abdication. To conform is to submit, and to win is to conform, to be beaten. That is why all victories are essentially vulgar. Winners lose the feeling of despair with the present that originally led them into the battle that gave them victory. They feel satisfied, and satisfaction is felt only by someone who conforms and who does not have the mentality of a winner. The true winner never wins anything. Was one of those I thought was great.
Boom. I got that one boxed in on mine.
Fuck yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's perfect. I like that.
I put that used to be the banner for the Cubs or the city of Cleveland. A true winner never wins anything.
Yeah, that's true. It should be Cleveland. That's like enthusiasm is sheer vulgarity. There was the one part though that like was a real personal one was back on section 83, page 98, where it talks about like where he's talking a lot about just dreaming and creating these characters in this section. And I like those parts. Like, if only I could meet the friends I dreamed, or walk along the streets I created, or wake up to the sounds of cockerels and chickens and the morning noises of the house, the country house I imagined myself in, and have all of this even more perfectly arranged by God and placed by him in perfect order to exist purely for my benefit in that precise form, unattainable even in my dreams, lacking only the dimension of inner space occupied by those poor realities, struck me because I have had for years, like at least 6 years, this recurring city in my dreams that is always the same that I go to on like a probably weekly basis, and it's always the same place. And it just reminded me of that, of like there's this space that exists in my world that I inhabit and that evolves slowly but slowly, but always has the same geography and a lot of the same businesses and same sort of vibe to it. And it's weird. It's like I would like to live there. If that were real, I would be very happy. But unfortunately, it's not.
But I like just on the next section on 84, the second paragraph.
Yep.
Where he talks about having chess pieces, and he says, I immediately gave each piece a name, and they became part of my dream world. They all became distinctive figures, each with its individual life. And for me, like reading that, like gave me a better idea of kind of understanding his idea with heteronyms and like this chessboard with like each one has a name and a life, and he moves it like, you know what I mean? Like they're part of like this way he's playing, but it's more than just kind of, I always thought it was kind of just being coy and playing and gamesmanship, but it seems like there's even more to it because they each have a life that he's carved out, and he's talking with them, and he doesn't interact with a real world and stays in that dream state.
Yeah, absolutely. In that next paragraph too, that first bit, like to some I attributed certain vices, smoking or thieving, but since I'm not myself a sexual being, I did not attribute any actions to them, apart perhaps from a predilection, which I thought merely playful, for kissing girls or trying to catch a glimpse of their legs. But yeah, the beginning part of like attributing vices, like his creation of these, and that does allow for. I mean, I don't know. We didn't ask Geronimo this, or like, and someone else probably, again, some expert probably knows a lot more about this than I'm going to say. But I don't know what his actual real life anxieties or problems or issues might have been. And like in some ways, if this, or how much of Pessoa is in Vicente Guedes versus Vicente Guedes being a separate heteronym, because if it's not completely separate, in a way, like his anxieties about publishing, if that existed, like I write to write, I don't write to publish, I can't play this game, I'm not in it for that. This allows him that distance to be like, this is a different voice, this is a different character that I've created. Sort of like I can imagine actors doing, like I can imagine like when we've done the other podcast, Brian, we create these characters that can do things that don't reflect yourself. Like that ability to put something in a different name or in a different place and give that person characteristics who can then represent that in writing is really powerful, and does seem to be like almost a buffer if he was like someone who was having some sort of, I mean, he must have had some sort of mental issues, because the depression parts in this and like the anxieties of it they're ring too true. They're too accurate.
Yeah.
Being made up.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think too back to the we had talked about the advice to women to pretend there's somebody else while you're making love to your husband.
Yeah.
Right? I boxed this. That's section 86, the very end of it. But he mentions that substitution is not as difficult as you might think. By substitution, I mean the practice of imagining yourself being pleasured by man A while copulating with man B. And it made me think if that's kind of what he's doing with his heteronyms.
Yeah.
Like there are these substitutions of the self, and it's like that way I'm not having this conversation. I'm having a character have a conversation that I thought of how, like there's this echoing effect of like creating a new life and experiencing it through that life. So you're out of touch with like it. I don't know. It seems like that was speaking to kind of what he does with these literary characters that he creates that have real lives. And
one of the problems I've always had with Pessoa's, like with Pessoa in general and his terms, is that, and it's mostly the fault of only knowing English and not knowing Portuguese, maybe, but like we don't know a lot of these other heteronyms. So all this gamesmanship that he was playing and what they were like and all the relations that existed between them is only conveyed through like short introductions or people telling you this was a thing. And like I've imagined the richness of this, and yet I've never seen it because most of this stuff has never been published in English. And if he had 100 heteronyms, there's only like 4 that New Directions is referencing, and it's like a small portion of what this was. And I find that sort of frustrating because I think that there would be I'd be more enthusiastic in general about that. I don't like his books because I like this book quite a bit, the latter half better than this last sections. But I think it would be more. There'd be more to it if we knew more about what these different characters represented and how they were different. Like right now we have Vicente Guedes and we have one perspective on him, but like we don't have Ricardo Reis, we don't have Alvaro Campo, we don't have, I think that's the name, whatever. We don't have the other ones to like know how they really were that different within our realm. And that's kind of the best fun of like the Pessoa mythos. And I wish there was like, and maybe there is, I haven't looked that carefully, but I wish there was like some sort of website that detailed what all of their sort of differences were and what they were representing, or what their outlook on life was, which ones had certain vices, rather than just like the one-off, like, oh, one of his characters was jealous of his girlfriend and that led to them breaking off. That's a funny story, but there's not enough weight to it because we don't have that. We don't have the knowledge of like who all these other characters were.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like, you're a big fan of Pynchon, right?
Yeah.
And do you ever read all the articles that he wrote to the was like the Santa Rosa, some really small newspaper, but like he basically had a heteronym, right?
Yep.
Was it
like a woman that was like,
that was always involved in everything, but like somehow, how did they figure out that was Pynchon?
I don't know that it's ever been like confirmed that it was, but there's like certain like hints, and I believe there's certain like phrasings and certain things that made people believe that it absolutely was him, and it's never been like denied. But I don't know that it was. The last time I looked into that was decades ago. Yeah. But I don't know that it was ever like confirmed that it absolutely was. It was just suspected and made sense. And like,
wasn't there like a 5-10 years ago a book that came out that they believed was something about like it had like Moo in the title or something like that?
Oh, I do remember that too.
And there was like is this Pynchon? Everybody was like, nobody knew, like, who's this author? I don't know if he exists or not.
He's like the opposite side of everything because he isn't like he doesn't appear in public, he gets to have the idea that heteronyms are being created for him, or the heteronyms are being created for him, or like the idea of like what he could be doing because he doesn't appear, right? Which is it sort of the almost an opposite in a way.
Yeah, we need somebody much more scholarly than myself, obviously, to explore that. But I just kind of got a Pynchon vibe from the idea of creating things to have new dialogue. And
this is going to be this is giving away a little bit of, like, we've already planned that the next season that'll start in 2019 is going to be for Radiant Terminus by Antoine Volodine, because he ties in to Pessoa in a way, because Volodine is a contemporary French writer who writes under a series of pseudonyms. Volodine isn't even his name. He's written under a number of different names, and has a plan to write 49 books, 42 of which have been written, maybe 43 now, or 44 even, but they are written by different characters within this universe that's the post-exoticist universe that he's created. And he does the same sort of thing, but what's richer about it to me is that there are so many of his books that are translated already and from a number of the different names that you can sort of triangulate what these characters represent and what the types of books are within his constellation. And it's sort of like the next stage in Pessoa-ishness.
Can't you just ever just throw a fastball down the middle? Why is everything it's like goddamn knuckleball?
Slider, low away.
Stop throwing junk, dude. Just can I just get some cinematic realism, like right down the plate?
Radiant Terminus is like Jessica Jones in book form.
All right.
It's a sci-fi book with a guy controlling your dreams and shit.
Pray to God we have legal weed in New York by the time we get to that. Please. Is that on the? Can we vote on that or no? Is that coming up?
Can we?
Jeez. Right in the way. Yeah, I don't know. Which other sections did you like in this part, Anthony? Or did you have any big takeaway of having gone back to this and not having read this section before? Like what things? Sorry. One more, and then you can do that.
I got one ready.
Yesterday that I circled and was like, oh no, and that's on page 129 in section 122 that says, those of us who are not pederasts wish we had the courage to be so.
Holy crap! I skimmed over that.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like that's not good.
No.
Well, Chad, if you really dig down deep down in there, come on, be honest.
No, absolutely not. But that stood out as I was skimming and being like, oh shit, that's not good. Right. The other part from that I did mark that was interesting is, and yet we do nonetheless have a sympathy for occultism, especially since it has a way of expressing itself that is incomprehensible to many who read it, and even to many who think they do comprehend it. Such elusiveness shows an exquisite superiority, which I'm down with. I like that little bit. But what did you find, Anthony, reading this for the first time? Like, in your mind, how did this differ from what you had read of Book of Disquiet before? And
yeah.
Like, is there some takeaway?
It seemed more. There's definitely overlap. Like when you get to the end of this, it starts to feel. There's the section Symphony for the Unquiet Night on 130, and that's something that comes up again. I think there's a few more of those in the second section, and I remember those specifically because I remember those were some of my favorites in the other section. So I think that's a theme that's going to run through. Yeah, one of my favorite lines in the whole thing was in 92, page 106. The creator of the mirror poisoned the human soul.
Got that.
I think that's just like such a darkly funny and like weird thing. It reminds me of like a dark Walden, where there's a point in Walden which is also starts out with kind of a slog. It starts out with the economy section, and it always feels like you've earned the richness of the second half of it if you get to it. So I feel like in some ways it mirrors the structure of this. But there's a point where someone offers him a welcome mat, Thoreau, and he says it is best to avoid the beginnings of evil, and he rejects it. And so it seemed, I don't know, kind of the same kind of weird humor about like the stoicism and the not owning and the like not doing and all of that, but like his is inverted, like this inside out version of Walden, which is like you should do these things very intentionally And now this is like, you should very intentionally not do anything.
It does seem to that whole mirror part about like even the section right before that, or the paragraph right before that, where it's like man should not be able to see his own face, sort of does tie into that idea of the heteronyms as like you shouldn't look too close at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can
For sure.
You could create these other things that can be that, because if you look too closely at yourself, apparently you're a pederast.
So don't.
So don't.
So like 100 years ago, I took a graduate level class on American nature literature.
Yes.
So like we do Thoreau, obviously. It was like one of the first ones we're reading.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, we were reading John Muir, My First Summer in the Sierras, or I think that was the name of it, or something like that. And apparently, like our teacher was telling the story that he had read or whatever, where Thoreau wanted to come out and see what like Yosemite was all about, and wanted to see California. So there was like letters back and forth between him and Muir. And I think I remember this correctly. This is one of those great ones. Brian's full of shit. This isn't right. So he comes out, and Muir's going to take him around and like show him how to camp, and like, you know, because Muir writes all this stuff about self-reliance, and you know, he's walking to the ponds and all that crap. And I guess he's like a total wuss when he gets out there. Like, can't hang. He's too cold. My feet hurt. Like, and John Muir's like, dude, come on, man. Like, he's like having to like carry him on his back to go anywhere. And I always love like the idea of like this rough and rugged, you know, self-reliance, that he gets out to like the Sierra Mountains and he just withers and dies. Can't hang.
Yeah, I think I've heard similar sorts. I didn't, not that specific, but similar things about how he was really not that.
Yeah, like Muir apparently was like hardcore, and then
yeah. And poor Thoreau. And so yeah, so
how about you, Chad? What were some of your Instagram? What were some of the Instagram moments you found where it's like you underlined it and like this is the picture that has to go with? Like obviously that pedophile one you just did is Kevin Spacey, right?
That would be so wrong.
Just a picture of Kevin Spacey, and everybody wished they had the courage to be like me.
Oh God.
Oh yeah, we should make a new square for the bingo for that.
Yeah.
The one of the ones I liked, it you could put Kanye above this one. I'm always afraid people will talk about me. I've failed in everything.
Yeah, something like that has to go with some vapid like Instagram model or celebrity, right? Like
those are all redundant words.
Yeah.
I also like right before that is how I experience life, as apocalypse and cataclysm. And I marked as like, yep, feel that.
There was a line in section 85 that what I wrote in the ledger was in the margin, very helpful, with like just a straight face, like, wow, that doesn't change your soul, but how? That is for you to work out. Like, all right, great. Thanks for the help there.
Cool.
Awesome.
That one would be great for Instagram too.
Just show like Tony Robbins or like Jimmy Swagger, like a televangelist. Figure it out.
You can do it. You got this. Yeah, I also did like one of the bits in this where there is like the more philosophical nature of this character's beliefs, where basically it goes back into the dream thing and back into whatever. But on section 91, page 104, the sensationist, where it says, in this twilight age of all the disciplines, in which beliefs are dying and religions are gradually gathering dust, our sensations are the only reality left to us. I did really like that as being like maybe a way of interpreting who this character Vicente Guedes is versus future Bernardo Soares when we get to him. That this one believes mostly in that sensation and in that as the primacy, almost Kantian in a way. But that there's or that's wrong, but whatever. But that sort of bit I like that, and there came up a few times in here. That sort of approach to life or metaphysics.
So my meme pick comes from section 105. It's page 113 in ours. And so I want you to picture, there's all those memes of like computer nerd dudes that wear fedoras. You know what I'm talking about? They're like trying to look cool in a fedora, and you're just like, oh God. Well, if you're out there wearing a fedora computer, you know who you are. Don't worry about it. We're laughing at you. Don't worry. You can laugh at me. I'm wearing a pumpkin spice latte sweater today. But so picture like the meme picture of like the dude in the fedora, and it says, a cup of coffee, a cigarette, the penetrating aroma of its smoke, myself sitting in a shadowy room with my eyes half closed. I want no more from life than my dreams and this. It's just the fedora guy with an e-cigarette, like with his, the screenshot. Like,
Yep.
And then after that, maybe ladies ? Right? Yeah. I'm wearing a fedora and I got a neck beard.
Oh no.
It just that felt like it could just be so hardcore hipster, but I wanted to take it to the fedora route.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a really good hipster one on 94 where it's like San Francisco coffee shop guy. Section 94, it's page 106. I am a man for whom the external world is in an internal reality. I do not feel this metaphysically, but with the usual senses which I grasp reality. That's like the dude in the corner of the party. We're just like, I'm not going over there to talk. You just like sip on your. So you're doing metaphysics and reality. Oh, okay, yeah.
The one right after that is pretty funny too. Yesterday's frivolity is today a constant yearning gnawing at my life. I experience time as a terrible ache. This guy is so whiny. I'm ready to move on to the next section.
All right, Anthony, what's your set us up with your Instagram or your meme.
You know what? Believe it or not, I was not reading the section with Instagram in mind.
Oh, you can just pick one and
yeah.
But I can find something. While I'm finding something, I felt like a lot of kinship with him with the weird sections where he was talking about like making your body ill. And when he says, I feel pleased when I succumb to a fever, it's just like so stupid. And I love it. I think it's so funny.
That could be a meme where it's Christopher Walken and the cowbell.
Oh my God!
Right? Because he says, "I have a fever."
Yeah, there we go.
And the only
that could be my
prescription
meme then.
is more cowbell.
It's more fever, a higher degree.
My favorite Instagram one for this week is section 126, page 134 in our edition. There's no point in thinking you know, or that you even actually do know what will happen. The future is a mist that surrounds us, and when you catch a glimpse of tomorrow, it seems very like today.
It's the rainbow, the more you know.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, there's another one. I am, in my fashion, an altruist. Throw like Elon Musk on there or something.
Elon Musk could go with the pederast one too, man.
Dude, for real.
Dude's got some issues.
No, there was in all seriousness, a very strange trajectory with this chunk we read.
Yeah,
because it changes quite a bit. Because there was like the whole part with like, okay, this really looks and sounds and feels like poetry, and then there were the sections that were uncomfortable because it feels misogynistic to us right now. Like it probably always was. It was a really interesting,
real deep into the death.
Yeah. And it had the one section where I mentioned when you dropped out, Anthony, that there's like a way that this book, like this does tap into like mental health and issues.
Definitely.
On page 126, which is section 121, it's just that whole paragraph that's like very much depression. The natural reward for my withdrawal from life has been their inability, which I created, to sympathize with me. There's an aura of coldness around me, a halo of ice that repels others.
Yeah.
I still haven't managed not to feel the pain of my solitude. It is so difficult to achieve the necessary distinction of spirit to make isolation seem a haven of peace free from all anguish, which is like real fucked up. Like, not good.
I super felt that. This is kind of just a small part, but the Japanese cup. Do you remember that part?
No.
I didn't mark exactly where it is, but there's a cup that is broken by the maid, and he wants to pretend that the cup had its own desire to do this and like to follow and to not exist anymore. And it's like very, I don't know, heartbreaking, I guess. I don't know. It's different.
Yeah, that this whole little bit where it was very much in the sensationist sort of metaphysics, but also being that those feelings lead to sort of a depression and a remove from the world was really strong with in that area. And I think it's in that part too that's in there. I remember that distinctly as well. I know I did mark it, but I can't find it now. But that was really interesting. So anyways, I don't think it's anything else anyone wants to add to this week.
I'm just curious how much the events of World War I are informing the text or not informing the text.
What was Portugal's situation in 1915 in relation to World War I?
I think they had quite a bit of poverty going on.
Yeah, well, the whole.
I think economically it was like really rough in this time, but I don't think as far as like people dying from actual like mustard gas and trench warfare, I don't think it was high, but I think there was like famine and sickness that were killing a lot of people in Portugal. But I don't know. Again, I'm not a history person, so
yeah, they were neutral. Apparently, they not formed part of the system of alliances involved in World War I, and thus remained neutral at the start of the conflict in 1914. But even though Portugal and Germany remained officially at peace for over a year and a half after the outbreak of the war, there were hostile engagements between the two countries. Approximately 12,000 Portuguese troops died during the course of World War I.
Okay.
Civilian deaths in Portugal exceeded 220,000. 82,000 caused by food shortages and 138,000 by the Spanish flu.
Oh, look at that. I just accidentally was right. Who knew?
Yeah.
That happens every now and then.
That needs to be a bingo square too.
It's 1916 that they really start getting involved due to requests from Britain. So this is just prior to that.
Okay, so then I'm gonna form a letter, since we're becoming nationalists here now. I'm forming a letter where I'm going to make Portugal and specifically Lisbon thank us that they're not speaking German right now, because basically America won World War I.
Back to back.
Yeah, I don't think France or England barely did anything. That was basically us. I watched Legends of the Fall, and like Brad Pitt went over there and just boom, took care of it. I'm pretty sure I have that right.
I think that's always that. Oh goodness.
No, so it sounds. I'm just wondering how much of that, like, that feels like it has to be informing the work in some way. Like, I would think of it.
That sort of despair and like there's that everything's falling apart.
Like what's the point of action?
Yeah,
feeling right.
It's gonna end up getting bombed or get the flu.
Yeah,
come to that fever. Wait, don't. Oh God. Okay, so next week we will be talking about pages 142 through 189 in our section, which is in our edition, which is sections 131 through 173. This is a bit longer, but this does get us into the next half, into the Bernardo Soares Book of Disquiet, the second phase, which was written starting in March 1930. So we're going to get into the next voice. And in the middle, there's a bunch of pages in which it has pictures of his writing, which is like chicken scratch worse than mine. Like I can't even make out letters on this.
Can you repeat one more time what we're doing?
We're doing pages 142 through 189, which are sections 131 through 173.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
And we will be talking about that soon. But we'll have announcements about like the YouTube whatever, and the podcast will go live on Thursdays always. And also you should pay attention or follow Open Letter on Twitter at open_letter. You can follow me at Chad W. Post. We'll have all the information about the bingo, we'll thank whoever wins. Assuming someone won. I don't know how many squares we hit this time.
I think we hit quite a few.
Okay, good. Yeah. Good. I didn't even, and then we'll have announcements about like what time the next podcast will be, all that kind of stuff. And also, I let it slip, but the next season 7, 2019, Radiant Terminus by Antoine Boladin. Get your copy now from Open Letter. If you use the code 2month, the number 2 and then followed by month in the checkout area, you will get 20% off. So buy it now. Get ready. This one's super fun. It's a sci-fi book that it's wild. It's wild shit. It takes place after the Third War. in which the third rising of the Soviet Union. So
that could be a new bingo square. Somebody gets history totally wrong.
Totally wrong. Totally wrong.
It totally could be underlined in italic.
That could be the free square.
Yeah,
That's just gonna
exactly.
have
Just make that the free square. Ryan says something stupid. Free square.
Oh man. Okay, so till next week, guys.
Please vote.
Well, imagine as I'm pacing the pews in a church corridor, and I can't help but to hear, no, I can't help but to hear an exchanging of words.
I love you too.
What a beautiful wedding, what a beautiful wedding, says a bridesmaid to a waiter. Yes, but what a shame the poor groom's bride is a whore. I chime in with a haven't